thank you very much. What a wonderful turnout.
Good man, Bertie.
Let me thank Phil Levinas and Megan Taylor and Simone Sanders for those very generous words of introduction. I am delighted to be here because what we're going to do today is we're going to do something very radical. You ready for something radical?
Yeah!
We're going to practice democracy. I know, it's a pretty radical idea, but what the heck? So what I'm going to do is chat for a little while about some of the most important issues facing the country. Then I'm going to stop. We have some microphones over here. You'll ask me some questions, and that will be that. Let me begin by saying a few words about our campaign. We began this campaign almost 4 months ago. And I think it's fair to say that very few people outside of my own state of Vermont, and by the way, I want to welcome all of you to come to Vermont. It's a lot cooler in the summer than it is here. And came to skiing, we got some good downhill ski areas. But outside of Vermont, I think it's fair to say that not a whole lot of people knew much about a senator from a small state. But I think that's changed in the last 3 or 4 months. And what we have seen, not only here in a small town like Sumter, which is about the size of my hometown of Burlington, Vermont, but we saw it yesterday in Greenville, we saw it in Columbia. We have seen it all over this country. Last week or so, 10 days or so, we were on the West Coast. We had 28,000 people out in Portland, Oregon. That's where the Portland Trailblazers play, and it was a little amazing going out there and seeing people on the third deck of a huge stadium out there. And we had 27,000 people out in Los Angeles. And media asks me, what's going on? And it's not just the large turnouts that we are having. It's how we are raising money. I think all of you are familiar with the fact that right now, as a result of the Citizens United decision, super PACs are the main means by which most candidates raise money. So what happens, what politics becomes about is not candidates coming before people just discussing issues. It's figuring out, gee, which millionaire or billionaire do I know who can pour millions of dollars into my campaign? Well, we are one of the very few campaigns that does not have a super PAC, does not want a super PAC. My agenda and what I'm going to be talking about today, and my life's work, is not about representing the interests of millionaires and billionaires. I was born in a family, never had a lot of money. I understand that in politics, essentially, you're on one side or the other. You're going to be on the side of the people who have the money and the power, or are you on the side of working people who are struggling? I have always chosen to be on the side of working people. So we don't get millions of dollars from billionaires. That's right. This man got it. Exactly right. That's the story of modern politics. You collect money from millionaires and billionaires. Why do you think they make those contributions? Guess they're nice guys? They want something, and I'll tell you in a minute what they want. But we have raised, if we've raised our money, we have raised money from 400,000 Americans. And you know what the average contribution is? $31.20. How's that? So, the media, who in the beginning of this campaign said, well, Sanders is an interesting guy, but obviously he's too radical, it's a fringe campaign. Who in America thinks, like Sanders, that we should have a political revolution that takes on the billionaire class? Well, turns out there are more people who believe that than the media thought. Who believes in America? Bernie's crazy idea that there's something wrong, that almost all of the new income and wealth are going to the top 1%. Who thinks that that's wrong? Well, turns out a lot of Americans think that's wrong, and that's why the campaign has been generating, I think, a lot of excitement and a lot of enthusiasm. And what the campaign is about is bringing people together, white and black and Hispanic, middle class and working families, lower income people. And by the way, we have 45 million people in this country who are living in poverty. Very few politicians talk about poverty. I will talk about poverty. And the main point, one of the main points of our campaign is, yes, these guys have incredible amounts of money and they have incredible amounts of power and they own corporate media, fine. The only way that I know that we can beat them, the only way that I know that we can do the things that have to be done for the middle class and working class of this country is when we stand together.
Yes. Yes.
Now, in South Carolina, but it's certainly true not just in South Carolina, what the history of politics is people playing off whites against blacks, right? People playing off gays against straight, men against women, people who are born in this country against people who immigrated. That's how they divide us up. That's how they divide us up. But at the end of the day, when we stand together, they may have the money and the power, we have the people, and there's nothing we can't accomplish.
Yes.
The people of the United States are angry, and they have reason to be angry. They understand that corporate greed, the desire of these major multinational corporations and the wealthiest people to be concerned about nobody else but themselves, that greed is destroying this country. And they understand that American politics is now dominated by big money interests. And as the gentleman here said, when billionaires put money into a campaign, yeah, they want something. Well, what I want to see, I know it's a radical idea, is what about a government that represents the vast majority of the people rather than big campaign donors? There's another issue that has to be talked about, and that is the role of corporate media in this country. Media will talk about everything except the most important issues facing working people, and that's got to change as well. Let me make another point that I think no other candidate for president will make, and it's a serious point, and I'm not happy to have to make it, but it is a truthful point. In my view, no president of the United States, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, will be able to do all of the things that have to be done to transform America unless there is a strong grassroots movement all over America, a political revolution. Now, why do I say that? Let me give you an example. Barack Obama is a friend of mine. In 2006, and somebody I respect immensely, somebody I believe that history will judge a lot better than its contemporaries have. As all of you know, in 2008, Barack Obama ran one of the great campaigns in the history of the United States of America. He started off way, way behind African American running for president. You gotta be kidding. And yet he mobilized people all over this country, created an enthusiasm and excitement that had not been seen for many, many years. Now, what was the mistake that Barack Obama made? The mistake is because he is a decent guy, he believed that he could get into the White House and then start negotiating with right-wing Republicans. And he believed, look, we're not going to get it all, but we're going to sit down, we're going to reach some kind of decent compromise. He was wrong in two regards. Number one, right-wing Republicans never, ever, ever had any intention of negotiating with him.
Yep.
Their goal was to obstruct, and I'm in the Senate, I saw it firsthand, almost impossible to get anything done without 60 votes, delay. But here is the second mistake that he made, and that is the powers that be, and I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but this is the simple truth. The powers that be in Washington, corporate America, Wall Street, big campaign donors, the Koch brothers, all of these guys have so much power over the legislative process that no president, not Obama, not Sanders, not anybody else, can get it done unless tens of millions of people are standing up loudly and clearly and saying enough is enough. So I say to you very honestly, I'm going to demand more from you than any other candidate. Yes, I need your support to win here in South Carolina and to win this election. But that is not enough. I cannot do it alone. You have got to be with me in the campaign, but if you think you're going to disappear the day after the election, you are mistaken. We've got to do this together. Now let me take a few minutes to talk about what I consider to be the major issues facing our country. And at the top of my list is the issue of income and wealth inequality. Today, we live in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But guess what? Nobody knows that. Why is that? Because people are working 2 or 3 jobs. People are struggling and figuring out how to send their kids to childcare. The reason that people don't know that we are living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world is that almost all of the wealth and the income is going to the top 1%. And that together, we have got to change. We need an economy that works for all of us, not just a handful of wealthy people. Now, I don't want to bore you with numbers, but it's important to know this, and I want you to think about whether this is the kind of country we should be. Today in America, the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. You think that's what America should be? I don't think so. What we have seen over the last 30 years, you know, Republicans get very nervous about redistribution of wealth. You know, it's a terrible thing. They want to redistribute wealth. Well, guess what? What do you think has happened in America in the last 30 years? There has been a huge redistribution of wealth.
Yep.
The only problem is that redistribution has gone the wrong way. If you look at a pie chart, what you will find is the top 1/10 of 1% has seen a doubling of the wealth they own in America, while the middle class's percentage has significantly gone down. Trillions of dollars shifted from working families to the top 1/10 of 1%. Today in America, I want you to think about it. We have more income and wealth disparity than any other major country on earth. All right, you know, England has the Queen of England and Dukes and Lords. We have more income and wealth disparity than the United Kingdom or any other country. And it is worse today than at any time since 1928. So this gap between the very, very rich and everybody else is growing wider and wider, and it is time for us to turn that around. Everybody in America deserves a fair shake. And let me, if I might, bring this issue of income and wealth disparity right here to South Carolina. It's an issue that impacts Vermont. It's an issue that impacts every state in the country. But let me just talk about how it impacts your beautiful state. In the last 2 years, I want you to hear this, it's really quite incredible. In the last 2 years, the 14 wealthiest people in America saw their wealth increase by $156 billion. All right, you can do the arithmetic yourself. 14 people, $156 billion, 2-year period. Meanwhile, here in South Carolina, 27% of the children in this state are living in poverty. Almost 300,000 kids are living in poverty. 14 people saw an increase in their wealth of $156 billion. And here's another point to be made. Of the children living in poverty in South Carolina, 138,000 are black, 95,000 are white, 34,000 are Hispanic. This issue of childhood poverty and poverty in general impacts every race, and we've got to stand together to change it. And what we have got to ask ourselves is, what are the values of our country today? What is our sense of national priorities when you have thousands of children in South Carolina who literally do not have enough food to eat? You have kids and parents where parents are going to work, very hard to find affordable, decent childcare. Education system totally inadequate. Just talking to a member of your state legislature. You have vast majority of low-income working class families cannot afford to send their kids to college, or they're going to leave school deeply in debt. What kind of priorities is it where you have so many families struggling for the most basic needs, putting food on the table, educating their kids, providing decent housing, when a handful of people in 2 years saw a $156 billion increase in their wealth? Those are priorities, those are values that have to be changed. We do not want to continue living in a country which has by far the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. Let's pay attention to our kids. They are the future of America. About healthcare. I know that many of you know there is one major country in the industrialized world that does not guarantee healthcare to all people as a right. What country is that?
Ours.
You got it. You're living in it. Now, I live in Burlington, Vermont. It is 100 miles away from Canada. 100 miles away. Canada, every man, woman, and child has healthcare as a right. Has been the case for decades. Not a big deal. That's what people assume. You go to Germany, everybody has healthcare. You go to the United Kingdom, France, Germany, everybody has healthcare. You go to Denmark, Sweden, Finland, everybody has healthcare. Well, in my view, the time is long overdue for this country to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee healthcare to all people as a right.
Yes.
And I want you all just to think, I know it is a hard idea because people don't, see what goes on around the rest of the world. How many people do we all know who have delayed going to the doctor? They're sick, maybe they're feeling heart problems. They delay going to the doctor. And then 6 months later, they walk into the doctor's office. And the doctor says, why didn't you come in 6 months ago? you're really sick. And I have talked to many doctors who say that people delay going to the doctor because they don't have insurance or because they have high deductibles. And you know what happens to those people? Sometimes they die. We lose thousands and thousands of people every year who die because they don't walk into the doctor's office when they should. Or maybe they walk in and it turns out they have to get hospitalized when they could have been treated much more easily if they walked in when they should have. All right. I happen to believe that the US should join the rest of the world. That is why I believe in a Medicare for all single payer program.